And I guess I want to ask you, did you have any advice for the president when he came forward with the blanket pardon on January 20th? What advice did you offer the president?
I am never going to talk about conversations, advice
Were you asked
in any way.
Were you asked
I'm
for
never
advice?
going to talk about discussions I've had or
Because
have not had.
You'll
I
remember,
can answer with the President of the United
Yes or no?
States.
The three hallmarks of this administration are incompetence, corruption, and cruelty. I'm going to focus today on corruption. And in my mind, there are two types of corruption: personal, and then the other I'm going to call public, governmental. Attorney General, have you ever been registered as an agent of a foreign principal under the Foreign Agents Registration Act?
I assume you're talking about when I represented the country of Qatar for a very short time.
The answer is yes. No,
hold
excuse
on.
me.
No. For anti-human trafficking for the World Cup. Anti-human trafficking
Yes or
for
no?
the World Cup.
Attorney
you can't
General,
put words in my mouth.
No.
You want to talk about incompetence? You're the one that
Excuse
said
me.
Joe Biden on PBS was competent. You had to retract those words.
Mr.
So don't
Chairman,
talk to me. Don't insult me publicly.
Hello, Patriots. Welcome back to Signal 76, your beacon of truth in these turbulent times. Today, we're diving deep into what might be the most revealing congressional hearing footage you'll see this year. And trust me, you're going to want to stick around until the very end, because what we're witnessing here is nothing short of masterclass in how the radical left operates when they're backed into a corner. Before we get started, I need you to hit that subscribe button right now, if you haven't already. We're fighting an information war, and every subscription, every like, every comment helps us push back against the mainstream media narrative. Ring that notification bell, because YouTube doesn't want you seeing this content. And I guarantee by the end of this video, you'll understand exactly why the establishment is so terrified of voices like ours reaching patriotic Americans like you.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Ranking Member. Thank you, Ranking Member. Thank you, and welcome, Attorney General Bondi. I just wonder, sincerely wonder, do you hear how hollow your last words sound in light of the pardon of all of the January 6th people, day one of this administration? I believe you're sincere. You want to protect law enforcement, but your principal, the president, pardoned every single one on January 6th. It rings hollow when you say these words, that if you spit on a police officer, we're going to go after you. Talk to my friends who are Capitol Police officers who were here, 5 of whom are no longer here. They are dead. And this administration, and I guess I want to ask you, did you have any advice for the president when he came forward with the blanket pardon on January 20th? What advice did you offer the president?
I am never going to talk about conversations, advice
Were you asked
in
for-
any way.
were you asked
I'm
for
never
advice?
going to talk about discussions I've had
Because
or have
you'll-
not had.
you'll
I
remember-
can answer with the President of the United
Yes or no?
States.
Did you give him any advice? Yes or no?
I am not going to discuss any conversations
That's a
that
no.
I have had with it.
And
You just put
your
words in
own
my
word,
mouth. I am
but-
not going to
No,
discuss.
I'm going to reveal your own words.
I am
Just a
not
moment.
going to
Please stop.
discuss
Please stop. This is
conversations
my
that I've
time.
had with the President of the United States.
Attorney
You asked
General,
me a question.
I would like to reclaim
and
the
you
last
asked
20
me to
seconds.
answer.
I have asked to reclaim my time. Please put 20 seconds back on the clock.
You have an extra 30.
If the general,
She answered and then answered it again and answered it again with a non-answer. I ask for your consideration
if the
of putting time
gentlelady
on.
will let the witness answer the
To begin
question,
with.
we will.
She
proceed.
answered it by saying no. Okay. The 3 hallmarks of this administration are incompetence, corruption, and cruelty. I'm going to focus today on corruption. And in my mind, there are 2 types of corruption: personal, and then the other I'm going to call public, governmental. Attorney General, have you ever been registered as an agent of a foreign principal under the Foreign Agents Registration Act?
I assume you're talking about when I represented the country of Qatar for a very short time.
The answer
Hold
is
on.
yes. No,
Hold
excuse
on.
me.
No.
No.
For anti-human trafficking for the World Cup. Anti-human trafficking
or
for the
no?
World Cup.
Attorney
you can't
General,
put words in my mouth.
No.
You want to talk about incompetence? You're the one that
Excuse
said
me.
Joe Biden on PBS was competent. You had to retract those words.
Mr.
So don't
Chairman,
talk to me. Don't insult me publicly.
This is so discourteous. This is so outside the committee's guidelines. Taking a personal shot at me while swiping at Biden? Very strange and very unprofessional of you. The answer is yes or no, and the answer is yes. You were registered as a lobbyist for Qatar. Is that correct? Yes. Never mind, don't answer. Did you disclose that when you went before for the Senate for confirmation? Yes or no? No, it was not in your documents. The answer is no. President Trump.
This was discussed at my confirmation hearings in detail.
It was discussed, but you failed to bring up the conflict that you had. President Trump recently announced he'd accept that $400 million Qatar airplane because it was just prettier than the one he was flying around in. Is it true that you gave advice that this was legally permissible? Yes or no?
I will not discuss any advice that my Office of Legal Counsel gives to the President of the United States on any matter.
When you spoke before the Senate, you said you would ask for ethical advice. Did you recuse yourself from that issue?
And talking about unprofessional, you say the President wanted a jet because it's pretty?
Excuse
Come
me.
on, this is a Senate, this is a
He said it
congressional
himself.
hearing.
He said it himself.
What we're looking at today is Attorney General Pam Bondi absolutely demolishing the Democrat attack machine during her confirmation hearing. This isn't just politics as usual, folks. This is a perfect example of why President Trump's picks are exactly what America needs right now. While the left-wing media focuses on manufactured controversies, we're going to break down what really happened here and why it matters for every single American who believes in the Constitution, law and order, and putting America first. Let me set the stage for you. Here we have Attorney General Bondi, a woman who has dedicated her career to fighting for justice and protecting American citizens, being grilled by Democrat congressmen who are more interested in political theater than actual governance. The congressman starts off by questioning her commitment to law enforcement, specifically trying to create some kind of contradiction between her support for police and President Trump's pardons of January 6 defendants. This is exactly the kind of gotcha politics that Americans are sick and tired of. The Democrats spent 4 years calling January 6th an insurrection while completely ignoring the actual insurrection that took place during the summer of 2020 when Democrat-supported rioters burned down American cities, attacked federal buildings, and created autonomous zones where law enforcement couldn't even enter. But somehow, when President Trump exercises his constitutional authority to pardon American citizens who were prosecuted in what many legal experts have called a two-tier justice system, suddenly the Democrats care about law enforcement. Attorney General Bondi handled this perfectly. She refused to discuss private conversations with the president, which is exactly what any competent attorney general should do. Executive privilege exists for a reason, and it's not just some technicality that politicians hide behind. It's a fundamental principle that ensures our government can function effectively. The president needs to be able to have confidential discussions with his advisors without worrying that every conversation will be leaked to the press or used as ammunition in congressional hearings. But here's where it gets really interesting. And this is where you can see the Democrat playbook in full display. When they couldn't get Bondi to take the bait on the January 6th issue, they immediately pivoted to what they're calling corruption. The congressman throws out this dramatic line about the 3 hallmarks of the administration being incompetence, corruption, and cruelty. This is pure projection, folks. This is coming from the same party that gave us the Biden crime family, the Clinton Foundation pay-to-play schemes, and 4 years of using federal law enforcement agencies as political weapons against their opponents. Then we get to the real meat of their attack strategy. They start going after Attorney General Bondi for her previous work representing Qatar on anti-human trafficking initiatives. Now, let me be crystal clear about what's happening here. They're trying to paint legitimate legal work fighting human trafficking as some kind of foreign influence scandal. This is the same crowd that had no problem with Hunter Biden's laptop, his business dealings in Ukraine and China, or the millions of dollars flowing into Clinton Foundation coffers from foreign governments while Hillary Clinton was Secretary of State. Attorney General Bondi was completely transparent about her work. She registered under the Foreign Agents Registration Act exactly as she was supposed to do. She was fighting human trafficking, which should be something every American can get behind regardless of political affiliation. But the Democrats can't let that narrative stand because it doesn't fit their predetermined attack plan. What's even more telling is how the Democrat congressman handled himself during this exchange. When Attorney General Bondi pushed back against his mischaracterizations and pointed out his own inconsistencies, he immediately started whining about being insulted and claiming the hearing was becoming unprofessional. This is classic leftist behavior. They can dish it out all day long. They can make personal attacks and create false narratives, But the moment someone fights back with facts and calls out their hypocrisy, suddenly they're the victims. The congressman even had the audacity to bring up some previous statement about Joe Biden's competence, which Attorney General Bondi had to retract. Think about that for a second. Here's a Democrat congressman criticizing someone for initially defending Biden's mental capacity, something that we now know was a complete lie perpetrated by the entire Democrat establishment and their media allies for years. They all knew Biden was in cognitive decline, they all covered it up, and now they want to use someone's initial good faith about the situation against them. This brings us to the broader point about what we're really witnessing here. This isn't just a confirmation hearing. This is the Democrat establishment's last desperate attempt to undermine President Trump's mandate and obstruct his agenda before it can even get started. They know that Attorney General Bondi represents a return to actual law and order, equal justice under law, and an end to the weaponization of federal law enforcement agencies that we saw throughout the Biden administration. The timing of President Trump's January 6 pardons is particularly significant here, and the Democrats' reaction tells you everything you need to know about their true motivations. These pardons weren't just about individual cases. They were a clear message that the era of political prosecutions is over. No more using federal agencies to go after political opponents. No more creating separate standards of justice based on political affiliation. No more turning American citizens into political prisoners because they dared to question election integrity or exercise their First Amendment rights. When a congressman brings up the Capitol Police officers and tries to create this emotional appeal, he's engaging in exactly the kind of manipulation that Americans have learned to see right through. Nobody wants to see law enforcement officers hurt. Nobody celebrates violence against police. But we also can't ignore the fact that many of the January 6 defendants were nonviolent protesters who were caught up in a massive federal dragnet that treated grandmothers taking selfies in the Capitol the same as people who actually engaged in violence. The two-tiered justice system that we witnessed over the past 4 years is exactly what President Trump was elected to fix. We saw violent rioters who destroyed billions of dollars in property and attacked federal buildings during the summer of 2020 get slaps on the wrist, while January 6 defendants spent years in solitary confinement awaiting trial. We saw Hillary Clinton walk free after mishandling classified documents, while others faced decades in prison for far less serious offenses. We saw Hunter Biden get a sweetheart plea deal, while Trump supporters had their homes raided by armed federal agents. Attorney General Bondi understands this, which is exactly why the Democrats are so desperate to undermine her before she can start cleaning house. They know that a competent, principled attorney general who actually believes in equal justice under law represents an existential threat to the corrupt system they've built over the past several decades. Let's talk about the Qatar issue for a moment, because this is where you can really see the Democrats' hypocrisy in full display. They're trying to make Attorney General Bondi's anti-human trafficking work sound sinister, while completely ignoring the actual foreign influence scandals that have plagued their own party. Where was this concern when Chinese money was flowing into Biden family accounts? Where was this outrage when the Clinton Foundation was taking millions from foreign governments while Hillary was making policy decisions as Secretary of State? The fact that Attorney General Bondi was fighting human trafficking should be celebrated, not criticized. Human trafficking is one of the most heinous crimes imaginable, and anyone working to combat it deserves our support. But the Democrats can't acknowledge this because it doesn't fit their narrative. They need her to be the villain in their story, so they twist legitimate anti-trafficking work into some kind of foreign influence scandal. This is also where we see the complete breakdown in decorum that has become standard operating procedure for Democrats in these hearings. When Attorney General Bondi refuses to play their games and starts fighting back with facts, they immediately start crying about unprofessionalism and discourtesy. This is the same party that spent 4 years comparing President Trump to Hitler, calling his supporters Nazis, and engaging in the most vicious personal attacks we've ever seen in American politics. The airplane controversy that gets mentioned at the end is particularly telling. Here we have a Democrat congressman trying to make accepting a gift from Qatar sound scandalous, while completely ignoring the millions of dollars in gifts and payments that flowed to the Biden family from foreign sources. The selective outrage is so transparent that it's almost comical. But here's what this all really comes down to: Patriots. The Democrats know they lost this election decisively. They know the American people rejected their radical agenda and chose President Trump's vision for America. They know that figures like Attorney General Bondi represent a return to competent governance and actual law enforcement. So their only strategy left is obstruction and character assassination. They can't attack her qualifications because she's eminently qualified. They can't attack her record because she has a strong record of fighting for justice and protecting American citizens. So they resort to these kinds of gotcha questions and manufacture controversies, hoping that they can create enough smoke to convince people there must be fire somewhere. This is exactly why we need voices like Signal 76, cutting through the noise and giving you the unfiltered truth about what's really happening in Washington. The mainstream media won't tell you about Attorney General Bondi's impressive legal background or her commitment to fighting human trafficking. They won't explain the constitutional principles behind executive privilege or the importance of having an attorney general who won't bow to political pressure. Instead, they'll focus on manufactured controversies and try to make her sound like some kind of foreign agent because she did legal work fighting one of the world's most serious crimes. They'll ignore the real corruption that plagued the previous administration while trying to create scandals where none exist. The American people are smarter than this, though. They can see through these tactics. They understand that someone who spent years fighting human trafficking and defending the rule of law is exactly the kind of person we need as Attorney General. They recognize that someone who refuses to discuss confidential conversations with the president is demonstrating the kind of professional integrity that has been missing from Washington for far too long. This hearing also perfectly illustrates why President Trump's mandate is so important. The American people didn't just elect him president. They elected him to drain the swamp, restore law and order, and end the weaponization of federal agencies against political opponents. Attorney General Bondi represents the first step in that process, which is exactly why the establishment is fighting so hard against her. Every question in this hearing, every manufactured controversy, every attempt at character assassination is really about preserving the corrupt system that has been bleeding America dry for decades. They don't want an attorney general who will investigate the real crimes that have been committed. They don't want someone who will restore equal justice under law. They want someone who will continue the two-tiered system that protects their allies while persecuting their enemies. The fact that Attorney General Bondi refused to be intimidated by their tactics shows exactly why she's the right person for this job. She didn't back down when they tried to twist her anti-trafficking work into a scandal. She didn't apologize for following proper legal procedures and registering under FARA. She didn't give them the sound bites they were looking for to use against President Trump. This is what principled leadership looks like. Patriots. This is what it means to put America first and refuse to bow to the political pressure from the swamp creatures who have been running Washington for far too long. Attorney General Bondi showed in this hearing that she has the backbone to stand up to the establishment and the integrity to do the job regardless of the political consequences. The Democrats' desperation in this hearing also reveals something else important. They know that their time is up. They know that the American people have seen through their lies and rejected their agenda. They know that figures like Attorney General Bondi represent a return to competent governance and actual law enforcement. Their only hope is to create enough chaos and controversy to prevent the Trump administration from implementing the changes that Americans voted for. But it's not going to work. The American people are too smart and too committed to saving their country. They understand that restoring law and order requires tough people who won't be intimidated by political pressure. They recognize that draining the swamp means appointing people who will follow the law regardless of political consequences. This is why your engagement with content like this is so important. Every view, every like, every comment, every share helps us fight back against the mainstream media narrative. When you subscribe to channels like Signal 76, you're not just getting news and analysis. You're joining a movement of patriots who refuse to let the establishment control the narrative about what's happening in our country. The Democrats and their media allies want to control the story about Attorney General Bondi's confirmation. They want to focus on manufactured controversies while ignoring her qualifications and record. They want to create the impression that there's something scandalous about fighting human trafficking or following proper legal procedures. But we're not going to let them get away with it. We're going to tell the truth about what happened in this hearing. We're going to explain why Attorney General Bondi's responses were appropriate and professional. We're going to call out the Democrats' hypocrisy and double standards. And we're going to make sure that patriotic Americans understand what's really at stake in these confirmation battles. This isn't just about one cabinet position. This is about whether we're going to restore the rule of law in America or continue down the path of political prosecutions and weaponized government agencies. This is about whether we're going to have equal justice under law or maintain the two-tiered system that protects Democrats while persecuting Republicans. Attorney General Bondi's performance in this hearing gives me tremendous confidence that she's ready for this fight. She showed that she won't be bullied by Democrat politicians or intimidated by media pressure. She demonstrated that she understands the importance of executive privilege and professional boundaries. And she made it clear that she's committed to fighting for justice regardless of political consequences. The road ahead won't be easy. The Democrats and their allies in the deep state will continue fighting against every attempt to restore law and order. They'll manufacture more controversies and create more distractions. They'll use every tool at their disposal to prevent the Trump administration from draining the swamp and implementing the changes that Americans voted for. But they're going to lose this fight because the American people are behind us. They're tired of the corruption and the double standards. They're ready for leaders who will put America first and follow the law regardless of political pressure. They want an attorney general who will investigate real crimes instead of manufacturing political prosecutions. That's exactly what we're going to get with Attorney General Bondi, and this hearing proved it. Her refusal to be intimidated, her commitment to professional standards, and her record of fighting for justice make her exactly the right person for this critical position. The Democrats know it, which is why they're fighting so hard against her confirmation. But their desperate tactics are only going to backfire. The American people can see through their manufactured outrage and selective concern about foreign influence. They understand that someone who spent years fighting human trafficking deserves praise, not criticism. They recognize that professional boundaries and executive privilege are important principles, not convenient excuses. This is why we fight Patriots. This is why channels like Signal 76 exist. We're not going to let the establishment control the narrative about what's happening in our country. We're going to tell the truth about these confirmation hearings and make sure that Americans understand what's really at stake. So make sure you're subscribed and have notifications turned on because we're going to be covering every step of this process. The swamp creatures aren't going down without a fight, and we need to be ready to counter their propaganda with facts and truth. Together, we're going to help President Trump drain the swamp and restore the America that we all love. The battle for America's future is being fought right now in hearings like this one. And Attorney General Bondi's performance shows that we have the right people ready to lead that fight. Stay engaged, stay informed, and keep fighting for the principles that make America great.